Hi, I'm Maria Thea Harris or Velo Sews on social media. Welcome back to Sew Over 50 podcast on Sew Organised Style. This week, we're taking a break from the top 20 countdown. Grab a cuppa and relax with us. There are 4 more episodes that have been listened to between 16,000 and 22,000 times. But wait, here's what we're doing in the background. So this week's episode that you'll be listening to is one of the live chats I did a couple of weeks ago on Instagram. This recording is with Rebekah Johnston, a textile artist and educator from Nottingham, UK. Why the change in programming, you ask? Well, each of the most listened to guests asked to record an updated version of their podcast, and that's what I'm working on at the moment. Can I just say, interviewing on Instagram Live can be very intimidating and lots of fun if you prepare for it. We can also answer any questions that you ask on the spot if you're watching at the time. And in the future, I'll be doing a few more Instagram Lives so that people can engage with the guest as well as turn it into a podcast. So today, please enjoy this chat with Rebekah Johnston, who was one of the November Making Zen Online retreat artists. If you want to see the video version, hop into the Sew Organised Style YouTube account now and share the fun with us. It's also on the Sew Organised Style podcast account, but I encourage you to go to the YouTube account so that you can pop into any part of that interview now. Thanks for listening.
We're here.
Rebekah, thank you for coming on to Sew Organised Style podcast today to talk about your work. And yeah, I'm just really pleased you're here.
Thank you for having me. Sorry for the technical bump.
My pleasure. Oh, okay. All right. Get my head straight. So, Rebekah, tell us where we can find you online.
So obviously Instagram is Rebekah_handmade, and my website is www.rebekahjohnston.co.uk.
Great. Now, the reason that you've been invited today, let alone what we're going to do next year, maybe, fingers crossed, is because you're one of the tutors for the Making Zen Online retreat. So I've got a little bit of information about you, and it's to do with how your art entwines self-discovery, sustainability. Can you talk to us about that?
Yeah, so I make slow stitched textiles, so it can be quilting, it can be wall hangings, but yeah, more kind of textile art rather than functional products, and yeah, kind of the hand stitching thing almost happened by accident. It was a kind of a gradual process. I was an art teacher. I taught art in secondary schools for about 13 years.
Yeah.
And then maybe in the last 2 or 3 years after I had a child, the work-life balance was really difficult. I had a period of time off work with stress, and it was around that period that I kind of came back to sewing. And I've always made stuff with my hands.
Yeah.
Hand sewing felt more, it's easier to kind of pick things up and put things down at a moment's notice if you need to get up and do something with a child. So it sort of happened that way, really. And I started documenting what I was making on Instagram, and that started to grow, and it sort of evolved from there, really.
Okay. I mean, sewing can wait. That's why, if your child needs your attention right there and then. That has to happen first.
Yeah.
The sewing can get done. It won't go off. It'll be fine.
Yeah, it's just for me, I can drop it and then pick it up an hour later, a couple of days later, and rejoin that easily. And I think I work in quite an intuitive way, so I'm not necessarily having to concentrate really hard on what I'm doing. I can just let my hands move and my mind wander, and that kind of approach works for me with where I am at this stage of life.
Yeah. And I suppose what you're describing now is the aspect of meditative practice with stitching. Yeah?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. It's kind of yeah, like I'm definitely I'm someone who needs to keep my hands moving. And I've sort of, yeah, we've talked about this quite a lot, but somehow your hands are better at articulating what's going on in your head than your words are sometimes. So it's a way for me to kind of process
Yep.
things. And yeah, repetitive movements are really good for just kind of, yeah, calming your brain. So that the running stitch is what I use most often. It's just the most simple rhythmical kind of stitch. That's what I use most frequently. And yeah, that's often my sort of go-to thing to do if I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed or a bit anxious. That kind of stitching really calms and soothes me. So
Okay.
yeah, it's definitely very meditative, if that's the word.
It works. It works for me. See, I sew clothes and I am constantly unpicking a lot of things all the time. Is that something that you encounter when you're hand stitching as well?
Not so much with hand stitching.
Yeah.
I guess it depends. It depends first of all what I'm making, and also like the reason I'm making it, I suppose. So if I'm working in quite an intuitive way with the running stitch, there's no kind of set design, so there are no mistakes, and I'm often mistakes can be quite magical and they get incorporated into it. So I mean, I sew clothes as well, although I haven't done it for quite some time, and it's a very different way. Like you have to follow a process, a step-by-step process, and it has to be done accurately. And I have to be in a certain mindset to be able to work that way. Whereas the way that I approach my sort of textile art is very free, and I do it like that way on purpose because I don't want to get in a tangle with something. I don't want to get frustrated that something's gone wrong. So yeah, if I'm working, sometimes I'll unpick if I'm doing something like needle turn, applique, and the shape's a little bit distorted and I wanted it a particular way, then I'll unpick it. But it's not in the same way as I might have to if I was using a machine.
Yeah. Oh, good. I think that's a good positive. Is you're just being intuitive and there's no stopping you, even though you can put things down and pick it up.
Yeah, exactly. And often it is, you know, if I'm in that kind of mood where I don't know, if I'm a bit grumpy, I don't want to then feel like I've failed at something. So if I have the attitude of it's okay, whatever I do is the right thing, then I can't fail. So that's good.
Okay, all right. Okay, so just in case people have just popped in, we're having a quick chat to Rebekah because she's one of the textile artists at the Making Zen Online retreat. So what are some of the things that you've been working on recently?
Well, I've just finished, I've just been part of a really lovely exhibition, which was called The Fabric of Home. And it was quite a different thing for me to work on because as I said, I sort of work intuitively and I don't necessarily have a set brief. But I was approached by a researcher, social sciences, who was doing some research on housing insecurity. And they wanted some quilts to sit alongside their research in an exhibition. And I was really fortunate to be a part of it, and I got to read lots of the interviews with families who have had to move house frequently through no fault of their own, and to just learn about what their experiences are, and in a way, well, the ways that they've been let down by the system and the kind of emotional weights on the parents and how it affects the children. So I kind of read the stories and put that into a series of textile art. So it was a larger quilt and some smaller pieces of work, and it was really lovely. It became quite personal to me as well because it had fabrics from my home, from my grandparents' home, from my daughter, things, you know, offcuts of fabrics that I used in her clothing or in her bedroom. So it was a really layered piece, really special, and yeah, it was a really nice thing to be a part of. So that's been my most recent project. And then obviously there's the Making Zen tutorials and some of the Christmassy things I have going on behind me as well that I'll be working on all the way up until December.
But before we start talking about your Making Zen tutorial, do you want to quickly tell us about what you've got behind you for the Christmas? Why not?
I've got some Christmas stockings that I'm working on. I'm doing a craft fair in a couple of weeks, so I'll pop some of those up online as well. And then on this side, some of the that was good, wasn't it? I've got some hangings that I make in some of my tutorials as well.
Thank you. I always look at what's around the person because it always reflects either themselves or their latest piece of work. So thank you for talking to us about
you're welcome. Yeah, I'm always surrounded by stuff. Yeah, it's very much my home is my studio. So yeah, my work is everywhere.
So next week, from the 18th to the 22nd of November, the tutorials from the 20 textile artists, which you are one of them, will be available free to people. 4 textile artists per day. So they'll be free. At the moment, you can buy the VIP pass, but I really encourage people to, because we've got, you know, where a lot of people are struggling with money. So I think that this, you know, the coming week from the 18th to the 22nd is a good opportunity for anyone who would like to be creative with resources from around their home can do this. And I saw that the schedule came out. And your session is going to be Found Shapes Patchwork, and it'll be released on Monday the 18th from 11 EST for 24 hours. So talk us through what you're going to be sharing with people for free on Monday.
So for anyone who's not familiar with the Making Zen retreats, they're really lovely. Kate from Zen Stitching has put together a really lovely thing, and yes, it's free, so it's a great kind of no commitment, no financial commitment thing to do if you want to have a go at some craft. And yeah, I've got a little example of what I'm talking through in my tutorial. So this is, I'll just hide behind it. This is my Found Shapes Patchwork. So like I said, I like working with offcuts, found shapes, and if you're work with fabric in any way, you will absolutely have anything that you can use. We've got so many offcuts, and you said you make clothing, so one of the first things that I started to use was offcuts from my own dressmaking, and worked with those negative shapes. So I'll be talking how to use those kind of shapes creatively and how to put them together into quite a sort of modern and minimal patchwork. And it's a really great technique for lots of different reasons. You can work any scale you like. So you could just make one square if you wanted and make a coaster. So if it's a first project for you, then it's really accessible and quite a quick thing to work on. And then you can increase your number of squares. You can have 4, 9, and go as big as you want, and the squares themselves can be quite large or quite small. And I just really like, I work in quite an intuitive way, and I really like to sort of teach people that process. And a lot of time people don't need help with the technique, they're more struggling with how to express their kind of creative voice. And there are a lot of barriers, like a lack of confidence, or maybe you've been told at school that you weren't very creative or artistic, or lots of people say, oh, I'm rubbish at sewing. And it's really not about skill. And I just like to show people that you can kind of trust yourself to come up with something beautiful. So I kind of talk through that process of putting together these squares, sewing the shapes down, and then arranging them in a sort of haphazard patchwork. So yeah, it's one of my favorite ways of working. And again, it can be completed over a period of time. You know, you can just have some pre-cut squares ready, some scraps in a pile, maybe organized by color, that you can sit and sew at your leisure. And before you know it, you've got lots of squares ready to make a patchwork.
Yeah. And look, the example that you've shown us is very contemporary. So I think it would, you know, your approach of, yeah, awesome, very simple and
Yeah.
achievable by making smaller squares or larger squares, depending on giving yourself the permission to be creative
Yeah.
as well. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. And just trying to let go of any of those ideas of like, I'm not very creative, I'm not very artistic, because we all are. It's just something that we've learned somehow that we're not. But yeah, I feel really connected to my work when I'm making it, and I'm in my sort of happy place. So to kind of pass that on to someone else so that they can get that with their work as well is a really nice thing to do.
So you're passing on the joy of creating to someone else so that they can experience that joy as well.
Hopefully, yeah. Hopefully.
Okay. No, that sounds really wonderful. Is there anything that we need to, any materials we need to have for your session?
So any offcut shapes, I tend to use, I mean, I have a palette that I like to work with. I tend to use maybe one like predominant strong colour, and maybe 2 or 3 other colours. So it can be good to have a little think about your colours in advance. And then just some squares. So, you know, they could be 20 by 20 centimeters, maybe have at least 4 squares ready and cut in advance. And just your normal sewing thread. If you wanted to make it into a quilt, you can do. So you'd obviously need some wadding or a backing fabric for that. But you don't need to go and buy anything special. You might have like an old blanket or you know, a jumper that you've shrunk and felted. They can all be used as you know, the center, the wadding for a quilt. So you can do that in a very sustainable way as well.
Okay. That sounds really achievable.
Yeah. Hopefully, yeah, I think so. It's always nice to look at what you've got in your home without having to go and buy something new. And you know, that's what quilting was. You know, people would use old clothing that didn't fit or was torn. You know, you don't have to go and buy new things. We probably have the things that we need in the house already.
And you don't have to, you know, send them away and then that ends up being part of landfill. You may as well use what you've got and be really mindful of the resources around you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. It's one of the things that's always in the back of my mind when I'm sewing and having those scraps and what we do with them. Yeah.
Me too. I think, in the last few years, there's been so much research and pictures where we've seen like landfill textile waste from fast fashion, and it's just really horrendous, and I don't want to contribute to that. So absolutely, like finding creative ways to use waste is really important.
Yeah, that's right. Just so you know, people have just come in. We've been talking to Rebekah and Rebekah Johnston, and her session is called Found Shapes Patchwork. It's going to be released for free on Monday the 18th November at 11 a.m. EST for 24 hours as part of the 4 video sessions that are released for free every day from the 18th to the 22nd of November as part of the Making Zen Online retreat. I got that
Perfect.
right?
You got that right.
And on both my Instagram account and Rebekah's, we have the link so that you can go in if you want to get the VIP pass, or if you just want to get the free pass for Making Zen, by all means do that. So we're trying to make it as easy as possible for people if they're interested. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah,
nothing to lose.
Nothing to lose. Any final words from yourself?
Oh, the pressure. No, just like thank you for having me. It's really lovely to have the opportunity to talk about my work and just to promote textiles. Really, it's something that's so undervalued in the world. So yeah, there's so many amazing people making amazing stuff. So it's really nice to have the opportunity to talk about it.
Yeah, it is. Now, for anyone who's joining in late, or for anyone who wants to re-listen or re-watch, so this recording will be on both my Instagram account, which is So Organized Style Podcast, as well as Rebekah's, and also on the Zen Stitching account as well, because we'll do the collaborate. Then I'll be putting it on YouTube so people can do it at double speed if they really want to, and jump into wherever they want to as well. Try to be helpful. Oh, okay, all right. Thank you everyone for joining. Thank you for Rebekah for being online, and thanks again. Have a really wonderful day.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you so much.
Okay. This episode of So Over 50 podcast on So Organized Style was produced by me, Maria Thea Harris, with permission of Rebekah Johnston, sound by bensound.com. Many thanks for the ongoing support of the podcast Patreon contributors. Their ongoing support enables me to develop this podcast for you for free. Make sure you direct message Sandy and the editors at So50 on Instagram to contribute to their ongoing posts and challenges that the team promotes to the community of over 52,000 followers. You can subscribe to So Organized Style Podcast, spelled with an S, not a Z, on all good podcast apps. Make sure you go back and listen to our free So Over 50 archive on So Organized Style Podcast. We look forward to joining you in your sewing room next time. Stay safe, everyone.